I'm unhauling all of these books, and I haven't read most of them, so you can tell me if I'm making a mistake, or you can give me some words of encouragement. Now, I would typically wait until the end of the year because I keep all the books I've read for the year separate, and at the end of the year, I refile them on my shelves and I get rid of the ones that I don't plan on keeping. But I just have too many books, and there's a lot of reasons for that. If you're interested, let me know, and I'll make a video about how my reading habits have changed since I started doing BookTube, Bookstagram, all that. But yeah, I just need to come to terms with the fact that a lot of these books I'll probably never read, and so I need to make space for the books that I really want to have on my shelf to reread or read for the first time. And because there's so many of these are not in any particular order. This first one was a gift. It's Casuarina Row by John Wickman. This was given to me by someone who had traveled to Barbados. They knew that I was trying to read one book from every country in the world, and they grabbed this for me. I still haven't read anything from Barbados, but this is in pretty rough shape, and just reading the synopsis of it, I was kind of like, eh. So not interested. A Map of the World by Jane Hamilton. I was a little bit on the fence about this one. I don't know really anything about her writing. It is a national bestseller. Take that for what it's worth. But the synopsis sounded kind of whatever. I looked up some of her reviews. I just don't know if she's really the right writer for me. But I think this was given to me because I don't see a price on it or a sticker anywhere. So I'm not exactly sure where it came from. That's the tough thing about when people know you're like a big reader. They want to give you books because they think, oh, Tony likes to read books, he's going to love this. But really developed readers have very particular tastes. So it's tough to give them a book just kind of blindly that they're going to like. Good to Great by Jim Collins. Because I'm a business owner, I used to read quite a few business books. I have read this one. It's fine, but I don't really see a reason to keep it on my shelf. All the principles in this book you can just find online anyway. Tropicalia by Harold Rogers. This was sent to me by the publisher, I believe, Atria Books, which is an imprint of Simon & Schuster. Came out in 2023. This one came out in 2023, and I don't read a whole lot of new releases. So in order for me to read a new release, I really have to be interested in it. Something has to really catch my eye, which didn't happen with this book. I'm sure it's great, but when you have like stacks and stacks of classics and books that you're really like super excited to read, it's tough to make room for something like this, in my opinion. Sporting Mustaches by Og Stone. Again, I think the publisher sent this to me. Seems like a fun book, but I'm not going to read it. God Knows by Joseph Heller. I'm just giving this one away because I have multiple copies of it. I have not read this one yet. I've only read Catch-22 and Something Happened. Loved Catch-22. Did not love Something Happened. But I'm going to continue to work my way through Heller's novels in the order that they were published. And this is the third book, I believe. So this will be the next one I read from him. But yeah, I just don't need 2 copies of it sitting around. Operation Snow by John Coster. And I'll talk about this one at the same time. Red Notice by Bill Browder. These are both kind of like 2 World War II era nonfictions. I used to read a lot of books like this, and there's nothing wrong with them. I still enjoy reading something like this from time to time, but you kind of get tired of the whole like title and then 3 catchwords like high finance murder and one man's fight for justice. How a Soviet mole in FDR's White House triggered Pearl Harbor. Yeah, I mean, again, some of these books are great. Some of them are extremely well researched. Others really tend to blend the lines between fact and fiction. These days, I'm enjoying the quality of the writing itself and at the sentence level rather than the details of the story. So these types of nonfiction books usually are a little bit more heavy on the narrative and not so much for the prose. And, I've read a bajillion books about World War II stories, and there's a million individual stories around that whole era that you could read about. So it just kind of gets tiresome after a while. Sticking with that same theme, Band of Brothers by Stephen Ambrose. I've read this. I would qualify it as good, not great. Much later after reading it, I read some pretty interesting critiques of Ambrose's writing about, like I said before, kind of blurring some of that fact and fiction. So I don't really feel the need to keep this on my bookshelf. The Revenant by Michael Punke. This is what the movie is based on, which the film is excellent. I've heard the book's pretty good, but I don't know. Now that I've seen the movie, I don't really feel super compelled to read the book. Maybe that's a mistake because a lot of times the books are better. But again, there's just nothing about this that's really like, ooh, I have to read this. I have to have it on my shelf. Moby Dick, I have multiple copies, some much better than this particular edition. You know, unless a book has got some really unique features in a particular edition and it's a book that I really love, no reason for me to own multiple editions of it. Insurrecto by Gina Apostle. I read this last year for my choice for an author from the Philippines. It was good, a little weird. I don't know if it was for me. I don't know if I got most of it, but it didn't inspire me to reread it, so I'm not going to hang on to it. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I have not read this. I'm not super intrigued by, and interested in reading his writing, but I've heard that he has other books that are better than this one. So if I do get inspired to read some of his works, it'll probably be one of those other ones. Less Than Zero and American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. Was kind of like on the fence about these in the first place. And then just hearing a little bit more about hearing interviews with Easton Ellis, I just kind of like lost interest. He doesn't seem like the type of person whose books I want to read. I've heard very mixed reviews about them. I know some people love them, some people hate them, but as all of us are faced with almost endless possibilities of books to read, we do need to have pretty strict filters for our reading selection to really make sure that our reading life is spent well, because it is so precious. We Were the Mulvaneys by Joyce Carol Oates. I got this at a book sale for $1, and I've heard excellent things about Joyce Carol Oates, but after kind of reading a little bit more about this book and then looking at some of her other books available, I think I'm going to go with something else from her to start, so I'm not going to hold on to this one. All right, we're halfway. Bright I Burn by Molly Aitken. This was sent to me by the publisher, which is AA Knopf. It came out last year, I believe. It's a historical fiction that takes place in the 13th century. I started reading a little bit. The writing seems fine, but the subject matter is not super interesting to me. It is a beautiful book, though. I love the cover design with the kind of like faux burned, I don't know if you can see that, but the faux burned edges. It's also got deckled edges, which I love. I know that's a matter that many people are split on. August by Callan Wink. I don't have any recollection of how this ended up on my shelf. It came out in 2020. It's about a young boy growing up in the Midwest. To be honest, I tend to not love stories through the perspective of kids. And while I'm sure this is a fine book, it just seems like it kind of gets lost in the mix of just another modern writer writing some type of auto fiction, perhaps. I'm just assuming here. I could be way off about this book, so if I am, please let me know. But a lot of times, if I'm unsure about a book, I'll just like flip open and read some random bits of it. And if it doesn't really like wow me right away, it's usually not a great sign. So this is a good example. On Christmas Day, August called his father. "Merry Christmas, Dad," he said. "Thanks for the card and for the check. I appreciate it." "Oh, sure. I figured you could find some use for it. I'm going to use part of it to get a new windshield for my truck." Truck? What happened to the Subaru? Nothing about that really stands out. So, Malice Aforethought by Avery Kelly Clark. I actually bought this brand new, full retail price. She is a New Hampshire author. I'm from New Hampshire. I bought it at a local bookstore, and I'm friends with the owner. I just wanted to support both of them, but it's sat on my shelf for almost 2 years now. I just can't see myself making the time for it. It's about a murder that takes place in New Hampshire in the late 1800s. The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. I haven't read this, but it's about a topic that I'm fairly familiar with. I've read a lot of essays and opinion pieces on this type of thing. Obviously, this is touched on in a bunch of different books that aren't specifically about this, so I've learned a lot about what this book is about through those types of things, so I don't really see myself reading it. The Professor and the Madman by Simon Winchester. I'm sure it's great. I've seen the movie. I'm not super interested in the story. It's about murder, insanity, and the making of the Oxford English Dictionary. But yeah, it's about the history of how the Oxford English Dictionary came to be. It's a cool story, but it's the type of thing where it's like, you see the movie, you read the Wikipedia page. I'm sure Simon Winchester does a great job of making it into a very compelling and interesting narrative, but I just don't feel drawn to it in any way. Black Hawk Down, haven't read it, seen the movie, not super interested in reading a book about it. The Perfect Storm by Sebastian Junger, been on my shelf for a few years, haven't read it, so probably not going to. Same could be said for Sea of Glory by Nathaniel Philbrick. I've read In the Heart of the Sea. I have his book, Why Read Moby Dick, which I'll probably read. Haruki Murakami and the Music of Words by Jay Rubin. So this is a biography, I believe, about Murakami. I've not read any Murakami's books, which is surprising to a lot of people because I do like Asian literature. There's something about Murakami that is off-putting to me, and I need to give him a fair shake. I need to read some of his books, but I've heard probably just as much criticism of his works as I have heard praise. And some of the criticism to me is not, it's criticism that really puts me off from his work, which is like, if you've read one of his books, you've kind of read them all. He has absolutely no idea how to write women characters, which is kind of like, he's weird to me because he's considered such a highly lauded writer and so skillful and masterful. But it's like, how can you not write women then if you are supposed to be this excellent writer? So I'm not really in a rush to read Murakami, so I don't see myself reading a 300 plus page book about the guy. Something like this, I'm a little bit on the fence on because I'm a big proponent of reading about an author to get you excited to read their works. That's something I did with David Foster Wallace that really got me excited to read Infinite Jest. And I think that really changed my perspective. It primed me to read Infinite Jest, let's put it that way. But I don't really believe in the idea of like must read books or must read authors. There are just so many amazing authors and books out there that you have to be discerning. And you'll never get to every single amazing world-class author or book. It's just not possible. The Trial of Henry Kissinger by Christopher Hitchens. I have not read this. I got this at a going out of business sale for a small used bookstore. I think it was $1. Love Christopher Hitchens, but I'm just not going to read it. I'm a little bit on the fence about this one. Plain Honest Men, The History of the Making of the Constitution. And this is by Richard Beeman. Does the Constitution even matter anymore? You know, I'm curious about this book because I think like learning more deeply about the history of such an important document like the Constitution is a good thing to do. But then a book like this, I kind of also asked myself, like, is this not something that I can learn about online through maybe like a free college course or a shorter, very thorough, well-researched essay on the topic? I don't know. Let me know what you think about this one if you have any experience with it. I'm not sure where this came from. I think these last few actually came from another going out of business of a bookstore where the owner let me go in there before they did their closing sale and just pick out anything I want and give it to me for free, which is how I ended up with a lot of books that I probably won't read. Because you might be going like, Tony, how the hell did you end up with all these books that you're not going to read? I'll say that especially for me, when I was first getting into like making content, it was like, ooh, I want to have this book and that book, because what if I want to make a video about it? What if I want to take photos of, make a photo carousel of these types of books? And so you kind of go into this like acquisition mode. And then after a while, you realize like, this is stupid. You're never going to read all these books, so you can't talk about them in depth. So why do you need them to make a video about or take pictures of? And a lot of them I acquired with the intention to read, but you read at a certain pace, and then after a while your tastes change over time, and by the time you have gotten to like, oh, maybe I could fit this in, you're like, I'm not really that interested in it anymore. American Heritage: The Presidents by Michael Besclos. Hopefully I'm saying his name right. Big book, wide book. Got some cool pictures in it. This is every leader from Washington to Bush. Again, kind of interesting, but can I just Google the information that I would want and figure it out? Yeah, probably. The President's Club: Inside the World's Most Exclusive Fraternity by Nancy Gibbs and Michael Duffy. Very much in the same vein as the one I just talked about. And the 1619 Project by Nicole Hannah-Jones. I've actually read some of this. It's more of the type of thing where I use it as like a reference guide, in the sense that, the topic comes up, read the particular section in the book, or someone criticizes a particular take, so I read it for myself. Yeah, kind of whatever about it. There's some good, there's some bad here, I think. And I'm probably not going to sit down and read it in its entirety. A lot of this stuff, again, is available online, or there's educational materials regarding the subject matter that are readily available. If you want any of these, I give people in my book club first dibs on getting them. The link is down below. But if there's any of these you think I'm making a big mistake by giving away, let me know. Make your case in the comments.